plans. Funny things, aren't they? Quick ones, detailed ones, and last-minute ones. But things don't always go according to the plan. Sometimes for the worse, but other times, other times things work out far better than you could have possibly planned. As most great adventures do, it all started down in a glen, by the side of a loch. Loch Earn to be precise, and the wee town of Lochearnhead. It was a Friday afternoon, and the forecast was for sunshine. I made a last-minute plan to head up north and try my hand at a summit camp. I'd chosen a quiet wee mountain named Meall in Chally, tucked away in Glen Kendrum. I parked the car and headed through the town towards the busy A84. After a short distance, I found the sign I was looking for, which led me up a small road and past a lovely wee church. After a wee bit of a wrong turn, I found the route to the cycle track. You know, another thing that hill walking has really given me an appreciation of is tarmac. Now, I'm no tarmac aficionado, but after hours of trudging through the heather, a wee bit of tarmac is a welcome relief. The route up was steep, but the path zigged and zagged, making it a little easier. Not too easy, mind you. I eventually arrived at a gate, and through it I was onto the route of an old railway line, heading towards Glen Kendrum. After a few minutes walking, I arrived at a wee bridge. I headed through a gate to my left and over the bridge. At last, Glen Kendrum. The mountain Craigmachgranich, standing tall at the other end. I think the forecast had underestimated the temperature because it was absolutely roasting. There's not much to shield you from the sun in Glen Kendrum. I stopped for a wee water break. I had 3 litres with me, but that had to do dinner, breakfast and everything in between. Ben Vorlich and stuc were visible behind, clouds still clinging to their tops. The glen was lovely, with the glowing greens of the bracken contrasting with the dark purple heather. all the while with the rugged Craigmacranich towering in the distance. As I got close, I could start to make out the rock and loose boulders on its slopes. It really was an impressive looking mountain. I could have climbed both mountains, but my fitness wouldn't have allowed it. The heavy backpack was taking a toll. I had to pick between the two hills. I decided to stick with the original plan and headed for Meall and Chailly. I headed off the track and into the heather. From here, it wasn't too far to the top. I'd already climbed roughly 600 metres, but this last 250 was by far the hardest. The steep, boggy terrain and a couple of absolute freakouts at spotting ticks on my trousers made for a tough time. Once I'd gotten onto the ridge, it got easier. I stayed in the clouds the rest of the way. At last, the summit emerged from the mists. I was absolutely knackered by now, so I made one last final push to the trig point. It had been a tough walk. I decided to take a wee breather. And spent the time staring into the murk before I began setting up the tent. I pegged it down well so as to avoid any flapping issues like my last wild camp. I got the bed set up, and then I was ready for my favourite time of the day. Dinner time. Spaghetti bolognese was on the menu. Needless to say, it hit the spot. It got a little brighter for a spell, and I managed to spot a faint Brocken spectre, but it didn't last long. I was a wee bit disappointed, to be honest. My plan was to be watching the sunset behind the mountains and falling asleep under the stars. Instead, I was sleeping in a grey sensory deprivation tank, with only the sheep reminding me where I was. I decided to get an early night. There wasn't much else to do. I woke around 4 AM. I don't know why, but I had the urge to peek outside the tent. I was surprised to see the moon and Venus floating there in the darkness. I fired up the stove and got the porridge on. The horizon began to glow, and I could see the clouds that had engulfed me the previous night, now lingering below. I sat and ate my porridge, and waited. The clouds were flowing over the mountains around me, like water. Crashing over the mountaintops like a great ocean. It was beautiful. I felt like a castaway, marooned atop this mountain island in the sea of cloud. The clouds were rolling towards me, lapping up against the slopes of Meall and Chailly like waves against the shores of the lochs hidden below. I spent a good couple of hours just sitting around, gawking at the views. The only other land that was visible were the highest of mountains, like nearby Ben Vorlich. I finally packed up the tent and all my gear, leaving nothing but a dry patch in the grass, ready for the next person to enjoy. One thing that always amazes me about nature is that you can stand in awe at the sun lighting up a vast cloudscape. But then you can look closer and see 1,000 tiny wee sunrises hiding in plain sight. I couldn't believe my luck. There are some things that you just can't plan for. I had a long walk back to the car ahead of me, back down through the heather and the bogs. With one last look at the mountain, I descended into the cloud for the long and misty walk home. Thanks everybody for watching. If you enjoyed this adventure, hit the subscribe button and come along with me for the next one. Hopefully, I'll see you all next time.